So we had a gentleman email us about this transmission. Came off of our GrayMarine Flathead. This is the 6-112, and we're going to be taking a look at how you replace the rear seal on this transmission. Now this procedure can actually be done with the engine installed and the transmission installed as well. So for the sake of this video, let's just assume that you have it inside of your boat. So of course the first thing you would be doing is removing the prop shaft and getting the flange removed as well until you have it down to this point. Now typically for most of these retaining nuts, they will have a cotter pin or they will have some sort of locking mechanism on these. For this particular transmission, it appears that this nut is held in place by staking it. So you can see these little indents here. Whenever they remove it, they'll take a little punch and they'll put it near the threads and they'll hammer it down, and that kind of squishes the threading over until you go to remove this nut in the future. Regardless, to remove this nut you will need, of course, the appropriate socket as well as an impact of some sort. If you don't have an impact, you may be struggling with turning this and it turning the entire engine over. So it's important you get an impact on there for immediate torque. So now that we got that nut undone, you can see that this flange doesn't want to go anywhere. So what you need to do is put a puller onto this flange to get it off of here. So here we have the puller put on. This one's been modified from something else in the past, but I actually kind of like these little tabs. And then you're just going to want to make sure that you are pushing that little puller snout into the little tapered hole on the end of this flange. You'll see there's that little tapered hole. If you don't have a tapered hole on that flange, sometimes if you put the bolt through here, there'll be a little stand underneath it, and doing that on both sides will slowly lift it up if you tighten them down. But in this case, we're going to use this puller. Now, if you enjoy investing in tools and you like spending lots of money on tools, use a power tool on it. I'm just kidding. Always use hand-operated tools for these. You run the chance of breaking them right here. So make sure you take your time and slowly lift this up. Plus, if you are using a power tool on it and this isn't breaking and this isn't moving, something else is happening. So keep an eye on it. Now, I am going to mention something very important when it comes to pulling this flange off. Sometimes the strength of the flange sitting in here is stronger than the actual shaft. So what that means in real life is when this is on the bench and you go to remove this with this puller, it'll actually push the shaft because there's nothing stopping it from moving. So having it installed on the engine is really important. Again, just to repeat that, keep it on the engine so when you're pulling this flange off and you're pushing against this post, it actually has something backing it up. So you're actually pulling on something. Otherwise, you're just going to be pushing this completely forward and it's going to be slipping right past all of the clutch pads. So doing it on the engine is actually the better way to do it. You also have to start to loosen off of these bolts here so that when you're pulling, this whole assembly can come with it. Now, as you're going, make sure that you are loosening these bolts. You will hit a point where they start to hit up against the back of this bolt here. So make sure that as you go, you loosen them until you can completely remove them. Now, if you've gotten to this point, you're going to notice a couple of things about the shaft and the housing that you've just removed. First of all, there will be a woodruff key in there locking this piece in place, as well as you may have noticed that the entire bearing assembly came out of here when I removed it. You also have this little piece in the back here that can't be removed without taking this key out. So at this point, we're going to leave it for now, and we're going to focus on the bearing assembly. So on the bearing assembly itself, you'll notice that right here is where the gasket is. So this is the surface that is sealing the transmission up. And also you're going to notice that this shaft here is pressed into this bearing. So if you were removing this and you notice that this part starts to show, don't panic. This bearing does have to come with it. And unfortunately you do have to press these out to get them apart. So of course you have two options. You can either invest in a press of some sort, as well as one of these right here, this bearing puller, or you can take this off to a machine shop. And essentially there is two seals on this unit. So there is the flat seal that goes around, and then there'll be a conventional seal in behind here. So once these are apart, it's just a matter of prying that seal out, taking the new one, pushing it in nicely, and then using a big block of wood and a hammer to slowly tap it into place, making sure that you don't dent one side or another. Yeah, and that's all there is to it. One final thing I'll say about it is if this shaft, in the process of removing it, starts to go in to the point where you can't put the nut back on after you've reinstalled the whole assembly, don't panic. That's what the shift arm is for. So by taking this shift arm and applying it in the reverse section like this, you'll see how much force that has on here, and you'll be able to pull the shaft into position without too much worry. And again, keep in mind all that play is due to the fact that you currently have the bearing housing assembly removed. Typically this would be sitting inside there, so there wouldn't be any play. So again, just pull this into reverse and you'll notice the shaft comes out, at which point you can reassemble the unit. So here I have a really simple setup. I have that bearing splitter as well as this little press. Doesn't have to be anything massive. I have it so that the metal piece here can clear. This flange can fall down. I have a couple of pieces of hardwood. You can use solid metal, whatever you have. All I'm doing is I'm pushing down on the metal there. I have a little washer there so that doesn't slip and it stays kind of in the middle there. And I'm slowly just pushing down to get that flange out. And there you go, it's that easy. So now the flange can be removed. So here's the pieces all laid out. We have the sealing surface, which includes this gasket material that actually sits underneath the bearing, as well as this metal seal, which is conventional metal seal with a little spring in there that is pressed into place. You can remove this however you like. However, I will mention it's really important that you get the seals in your hands before you remove the old ones, just in case you cannot find these and they're unatamium. So make sure you do that. Get this all cleaned up and hang on to these parts. The bearing seems to be in good condition, so we'll reuse it. Don't pack this with anything. It shares oil with the rest of the engine, so you don't want grease getting into your engine. And then here's the flange. Of course, you can clean this up with a little bit of maybe a Scotch Brite pad, but I wouldn't sand this or anything like that. So yeah, that's the surfaces. Thank you so much for tuning into our video. If you guys have any more questions or comments, or want to see something specific on this Flathead GrayMarine, please let us know. We'd be happy to help. And to the gentleman that reached out to us, I hope that answers your question. If there's anything else we can help you with, please let us know. You guys can shoot us an email or drop a comment. Thank you so much for watching, and have a good rest of your day.